How does me being vaccinated impact other people? There are diseases we vaccinate for that only concern ourselves. For example, we hardly can spread something like tetanus to someone else. So this vaccine, and some others, are only for our own protection. However, diseases such as COVID-19, influenza, hepatitis, etc., have the potential to be transmitted from infected person to uninfected person, creating dangerous situation for everyone. Unless you are vaccinated. In theory, the second group's vaccines are supposed to stop, for one, the own body from suffering a full-blown infection by the respective disease, by teaching the immune response what to react to with dummy parts of the virus, and thus, keeping you from getting fully sick when you do encounter the real thing. Secondly, they are supposed to stop you from spreading the respective disease onto other members of your community you have close contact with by triggering the above-mentioned immune response. Since you will not develop symptoms and should not be able to build enough virus in your blood to spread it further no matter how the particular disease is spread. So, as you see, the second group of vaccine never only impacts the person taking the vaccine, but everyone around him. In fact, the more people are vaccinated, the better it actually works for the entire community. There are always people who can't vaccinate themselves, or don't want to. Infants and small children, pregnant and nursing women, people with health problems, and those just not trusting into vaccines for religious or personal reasons. And we, as people who have been vaccinated, do protect these people by being fully vaccinated, no matter which infectious disease. This is called herd immunity. It's basically like a herd of animals who take their young and sick members of the group into their middle when they encounter an outside threat. The strong adult members of a group and those who have the experience to know how they are dealing with the threat in the best possible way, stand in the path of the threat, and combat it, while, ideally, the threat never even reaches those who don't know how to defend themselves. And the greater the number of herd members who know how to fight, the better the chances of the young and vulnerable in their middle for survival. For humans, this means that if many members of a social group are vaccinated, the chances that any virus is spread far enough to reach someone who isn't vaccinated become smaller. And if the percentage of people vaccinated is high enough, a spread of a disease can eventually become fully blocked and runs out. They say, in case of the COVID vaccines, that the chance for a good immune response, meaning that the virus will not multiply in your blood at all, are at between 70 and 95%, depending on the vaccine, meaning only 1 to 3 out of 10 vaccinated people who encounter the disease will have the virus multiply in their body. But with the vaccine, these people will usually not get sick enough to spread the virus further if you keep to the proper hygiene and distance protocols, even if you would have some symptoms, which still can happen in about 1 to 2 cases in every 1,000 vaccinated infections, if they are surrounded by vaccinated people. Again, only 1 to 3 out of every 10 people he encounters might have a stronger response to the virus, and only 1 to 2 of 1,000 such cases may even be able to spread it further. Eventually, at around 75 to 85% of the overall population being vaccinated, the statistics of someone being able to spread it to someone who can't vaccinate are so small. The infection is basically under control. Opposite to that, every unvaccinated person fully infected, even without symptoms, can infect an unlimited number of unvaccinated people. And this unlimited number of unvaccinated people can again infect basically every unvaccinated person they encounter. If just one unvaccinated UV. Person infects 4 more UV. And each of these 4 UV. Another 4. And each of these 4. Another 4, and so on. You do have several hundreds of infections within just a handful of contacts who each do infect. Again, there is no stopping it. This is also why all countries try to either strongly encourage the COVID vaccines, or make it mandatory in layers of society where people interact a lot with each other. Thus, to answer your question, you vaccinate to protect yourself. Of course. But the overall impact of your vaccination for everyone else is far greater. I say it even more important to vaccinate yourself in order to protect others than to protect yourself. Basically, your immune system can jump on the virus because it's ready to go. Viral load is lower as a result, making you less contagious, potentially for a shorter period of time too. When the vaccines were first developed, studies focused on efficacy of fighting the disease, and not transmission. Any responsible virologist couldn't say it reduced transmission at that point because we didn't know. Then over time, studies were done, and lower transmission started to have more evidence. Purple point to the lack of knowledge from months ago to make the case that transmission is not affected. Or they just heard it at some point. And it's hard to change minds once they're made up. Has Reddit done an AMA with a virologist? This might be helpful for those with questions about vaccines and effectiveness at preventing the spread of disease. It reduces the chance of you transmitting the virus. Even if you do get it, it makes it less likely for you to end up in hospital. Which means you're not using a bed somebody else might need for a non-COVID health condition. And it reduces the chance of you properly catching it in the first place. The more people catch COVID, the more likely it is for variants to appear. Variants happen when the virus reproduces incorrectly, which happens a lot. We only hear about a few variants because most variations aren't useful ones for the virus. Think of variants as the virus evolving. One variant might be more transmissible. Another might make it less so. The variant that will spread is the more transmissible one. However, the more variants there are, the more likely it is that our vaccine, treatment methods, tests etc. will become less effective. So basically, more cases equals more variants. More variants equals bad. So, we want as many people vaccinated as possible worldwide. Because that protects everybody. Not being vaccinated, but being unvaccinated affects others. Currently in my country, hospitals are once again at full capacity and planned medical procedures are stopped. About 2/3 of people in hospitals are unvaccinated. Remaining 1/3 are vaccinated, but already have huge number of comorbidities. So they are there just to keep them safe. If something goes wrong, I am currently one of those people whose pre-planned medical procedures are very likely getting cancelled. I'm just hoping that hospitals get emptier by the time my procedure comes, as it's pretty simple one. And there's some time to it. Also, COVID is so wild with its range of symptoms that it is almost always better to at least get some resistance built up against it. In my area, there was a 23-year-old athlete that went from hero to zero in 3 days due to COVID. So even the young fit group can be heavily affected. The real reason it is being mandated, less than 70% has the vaccine. We need at least that to even think about herd immunity. Dumb people and social politics are getting in the way. This directly affects the people who can't get vaccinated. Herd immunity protects them as well. If you're less likely to contract the virus, you're less likely to be able to pass it on to anyone else. Very basically, Unvaccinated people on average spread more viral particles when infected. Vaccinated people who are high risk regardless could suffer much worse or die. Getting vaccinated lessens but doesn't stop the chance of high-risk people, regardless of vaccination, contracting it and dying. Snowball that over a whole populace. And not getting vaccinated means more people will unnecessarily die. 1. Reduced chances of being hospitalized and taking up room of people who can't be vaccinated. 2. Reduced chances of passing on COVID. 3. Reduced chances of mutations occurring. One of the big thing is something called herd immunity. Not everyone can get the vaccine if they're immunocompromised, allergic, or other health reasons. But if everyone you come in contact with is immune, you're essentially immune. There's also the fact that someone with COVID can take up an ICU bed that might be needed by someone else. If your loved one is having a heart attack, for example, and the ICU is full at the nearest hospital, they could potentially have another while being transported to another hospital instead of getting treatment right away. If you want some stats, Intermountain Healthcare in Utah has some charts and info on their social media pages that they encourage people to share. Consider checking that out. And good on you for getting the jab. 3. Something important to keep in mind is that you can be sick and not experience symptoms. This makes you an asymptomatic carrier. When you are an asymptomatic carrier, you can spread diseases without knowing. Because, despite not having any issues with the infection yourself, the pathogen is still inside you, and thus can use your bodily fluids to spread and endanger other people's lives. Furthermore, there's many people that can't get the vaccine for various reasons. Severe allergies, compromised immune systems and social stigma, to name a couple important ones. Yes, really. It's stupid but true. Some people can sink as low as to harass others for even the most reasonable health-related decisions and concerns. Giving yourself that resistance can quite seriously be the difference between life and death for those individuals. Herd immunity is something that should be preserved. Always. Also, more people becoming infected means more chances for the disease to mutate. This is why there's so many variants of COVID. It's infected a lot of people, which made it get lots of specialized variants over time. Some that are just more intense with their usual symptoms. Some that attack different parts of the body. Some that are absurdly easy to spread, etc. Last thing. The healthcare systems worldwide are wrecked. Like, it's all getting utterly shredded by this pandemic. The less infections happen, the faster we can return to ordinary society. Then we can get to fixing the myriad of other calamities that are going on. Because no vaccine is 100% effective. The Pfizer vaccine is only 95% effective. And it's the most effective as of now. You could infect one of the unlucky 5% if you were to catch COVID. And it's more likely if you're unvaccinated.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.